Welcome to another edition of What the Fuck Happenings Here. Yeah, I'll get there. Yeah, ooh, scary. Nihilism. Ooh, bad. Anyway, so yes, I know we've done this so many times, and it just keeps reoccurring, okay, as some sort of horrible sickness. That people bring this stuff up, and you know, it does always puzzle me as literate, you know, seemingly intelligent people would waste any time at all on some philosophy that can't figure out where the value comes from in our existence. And it's obviously about the feelings, obviously. So anyway, so some idiot, asshole, nice enough person, I suppose, brought up this Marquis de Sade and how, oh, this is so fascinating, this reasoning and this rationalizations and blah, 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 blah. And it's just such a pile of shit. So he referenced some video. I didn't watch it. Because, you know, I already know it's an hour worth of crap about a philosophy that's vacuous, in the sense that it's making some kind of idiotic statement that even though I feel like my feelings matter, they don't really. And so if mine don't matter, yours don't matter. And so I should do whatever the fuck I'm compelled to do, I have some slight interest in doing, no matter how harmful it is to other people, because what happens to other people doesn't matter, because what happens to me doesn't matter. Even though I don't really believe what happens to me doesn't matter, it doesn't matter. I mean, it's just too fucking stupid. So anyway, I made a whole video talking about it. I didn't play the video, so I figure I'll play the video here. And it's just, look, they're all evasions. It doesn't matter where you go. Every human seems to have some way of evading the simple truth that it's just a mechanical universe. These are just mechanical pieces inside the mechanical universe. These pieces with sentient brains are distinctly different because of the fact that they are creating, they're synthesizing, producing sensation. It's an event. It happens in this universe because of the life on the surface of Earth. Okay. Very complex origins. I mean, billions of years of evolution to create this manifestation. But it's just machinery. It's just for a simple purpose of, you know, sticking wieners in vaginas. It doesn't have much other purpose. Anyway, I mean, its ultimate function is for a crude purpose. And, you know, just to get something so it's survivable, so it can consume, get a little bit fat, lay some eggs, and then get the fuck out of the way. And it's all quite a tragic story, sad, and unfortunate waste of an awful lot of torture. And that's really dumb. So anyway, we'll play this video. So, yeah, so it's only interesting as a, you know, as just, this is all humans do, is just waste time trying to find some silly, irrational pile of mush to evade accepting and acknowledging simple truth about our existence.
Hello YouTube. In this video, I want to present some of the ideas on moral philosophy from the...
So again, the whole idea of moral philosophy just sort of breaks the notion, because morality is about defining dogmatic statements. There's very little moral philosophy beyond happy, good, sad, bad. You know, pleasure good, pain bad, and now we're just going to have this idea that, you know, we're going to play some game where somehow somebody else's pain isn't as bad as my pain, and they call that morality, but it's obviously not logical or reasonable. So that was what I was going to talk about this week, was going to be just the idea that you're not really worth the price paid for your existence, that none of us are, that every second there's a leisure of torture that's increased. You know, eyes are poked out and all kinds of horrible things happen to all kinds of critters, so we can pretend to be important, and we're just pretending.
Work of the Marquis de Sade. Now, before we get into this, it's important to note that interpreting Sade is no easy matter. This is largely because he...
Okay, so I don't think it's all that complicated, because he basically just stated his defenses of his nonsense, and that all comes down to nature says it's okay. Well, nature doesn't have a voice, nature doesn't have a brain, nature didn't think about it, so obviously that's like saying the opinion of the dead horse, you know, or something. It just doesn't make any sense. Why would I ask a puddle of mud, is life worth it? Puddle of mud isn't going to know. It's not going to have a useful opinion.
Presents his ideas in the form of novels rather than as direct, carefully structured philosophical arguments.
Right, so this is sort of like Nietzsche, or what's her name, you know, the shrugged guy, Atlas Shrugged woman. Yeah, it's all the same bullshit, just rationalizations for self-interested, motivated behavior, which is just plain stupid, because we're not in a single-player game. Just a fact. There's a whole bunch of things playing sentient brain in our arena, and we have to account for our effect as a net product on all of that sentience.
He would put his ideas into the mouths of his characters, and not all of them shared the same views. Moreover, it's unclear to what extent Sade intended his work to be taken seriously. The arguments in his books might be intended as satire, or they might be just, you know, an aspect of the libertine fantasies, a tool to shock and break taboos in order to enhance the pornographic excitement, rather...
whatever. So I can't even understand any of that. And so I talked about, I don't get it, okay? I don't get any of this violent, gory, get-off films. You know, sorry, it just doesn't do it for me.
Other than as arguments to be taken as like serious expressions of his own actual position. So, as I say, it's a bit difficult to interpret him. Nevertheless, there are certain themes that occur regularly throughout his work. In particular, many of Sade's philosophical arguments aim to defend a position we might call immoralism.
Right. So again, it's just nihilism. It's not immoralism in the sense that it's just saying there's nothing at stake here. So nothing you're doing will in any way change the balance of anything that really means anything. They're just, the only morality that exists is contrived moralities defined by some god or something. There's no true stakeholders, and there's no true net outcome that has any reality. So it doesn't matter whether I make a universe full of 1 billion tortured organisms, or I make a universe full of a bunch of blissful, you know, what's the word they use? You know, where it's just wallowing in some bliss. That those two worlds have the same meaning. They can be understood as being mechanically the same thing. It's just electrons and protons bouncing around, and it doesn't make any difference. And it's just so fucking ridiculous when you're actually a feeling organism and you're going to say it doesn't matter whether I feel good or I feel bad. It's just too ridiculous a statement.
And this involves two claims. First, moral nihilism, which is the view that morality is groundless. Morality...
Yes, all of the human contrived crap is. It's pretty much groundless, okay? You can't divorce your wife or something, all this little bullshit. And the fact is even murder and birth, all of this kind of stuff where you're imposing your will on something. There's no reason to have an absolute taboo against either one, for the sake of it. To say murder's always wrong. Well, it's not always wrong. It's not always net negative. So clearly, again, if you can torture one person to save 10 people from the same torture, do you have a logical choice? No.
Is a fiction. There are no moral constraints on our actions. There is no good reason.
So again, it's really just value constraints, ethical constraints. I mean, ethical is so much better a word. It's more scientific, and gets to the real point that you're just trying to make a value weight. You're trying to weigh the values and come up with a correct answer. And clearly the values are, as a general principle, the social contract is just basically saying, yes, there's a pretty absolute taboo, zero tolerance for jaywalking, but yeah, there's times when it's okay
to act otherwise than in your own self-interest. Now, moral nihilism in itself may not be all that controversial these days.
So that's not even, that's like, what do you mean it's not controversial? I mean, to pretend, again, as sentient organisms, for somebody to say the words to me that, well, it doesn't matter, it doesn't make any difference as an event in the universe, whether I'm tortured for 1,000,000 years or I'm in bliss for 1,000,000 years. Those two worlds are the same thing. Either one is a preference. You couldn't figure out that one would be better than the other. It's such a lie. I mean, there's nobody who believes that. There's no sentient creature that could think that, all right, in any other sense than as a deliberate lie.
Yeah, there are plenty of philosophers who think that morality...
There's no way they would ever sign up for, yes, give me 1,000,000 years of torture because I'm going to prove I'm right. They're not even going to do that. There's nobody interested enough in proving that nihilism makes sense because they would never, not be able to figure out that, yeah, it's better that I'm happy for 1,000,000 years than sad for 1,000,000 years.
Is constructed, not discovered, or that morality is not justified by reason or whatever. But second, Sade argues that it is in each person's self-interest to act contrary to accepted moral norms.
Right, so that doesn't even, as a theme, that's even stupid. I mean, obviously there's all kinds of nuance to every circumstance. It'd be idiotic to say I should always do the opposite of what God says. That's dumb. That's not even being a good criminal, So, that just doesn't make any sense at all. There's times when it would be to your advantage to at least pretend, to care about someone.
The best way to maximize pleasure for myself is to commit crimes and...
So, this doesn't make any sense. Why would that make me feel good? I mean, crimes are crimes for a reason, because they hurt other people. Why should hurting somebody else make me feel good? So you could only make that argument that, if you like ice cream, as I do, and you like to have it, but it causes cows irritation and harm. Oh, okay, I can do without. I don't want to, give a cow a bad day. you know, for a trivial pleasure. So, I mean, exactly where are my value stakes in this committing crime thing? What crime? Stealing candy from a baby? I mean, what crime exactly am I going to benefit from? I mean, theft, it just makes sense. Okay, yes, if I don't have to worry about the victim's loss and I'm only going to consider my gain, then I guess, okay. But there's not much else you could figure out where the person is actually physically harmed where I'm going to get off on that. That's going to make me feel good. Watching somebody else suffer makes me feel good. Where's that? Where do you even... How do you even imagine? I can't even imagine that.
Violate the accepted moral code of my society. Torture, rape.
I mean, I can't even imagine making a girl cry or something, you know. She just, you know, oh yeah, that really gets me off when they're... No. I mean, what? Doesn't make any sense. No, in a negative way. You know, positive tears are different.
Murder, incest, paedophilia. These are all...
yeah, again, why would I... How would I personally, in any way, gain from just murder? Like, go out and just murder somebody. So again, you have to be some kind of bizarre psychopath to start with. Some bizarre fetish where somehow you get off watching somebody else in agony. Huh? So I'm supposed to relate to this bullshit when there's no way to relate to that. I don't have any secret passion for seeing something else in pain. It doesn't do anything for me personally.
Advocated at length in Sade's work. It is by imposing pain and suffering on others that I achieve the greatest pleasure for myself.
So again, that part just, what the fuck are you talking about? So yeah, from my origin on Earth, there's never been a moment where I enjoyed watching something crushed, like a bug or something. There's never a moment where I found any of that enjoyable.
Okay, so we'll take these one at a time. Let
alone ripping a human apart or something. I mean, it's just I don't even understand the conversation.
What's central argument for his moral nihilism?
All right, so let's move ahead a little bit. So moral nihilism, again, and the nihilism is just based on the fact that somehow he's claiming that nature says so. And no, nature has no brain. It didn't say a damn thing. Okay, a mud puddle didn't say so. So, I mean, there's no opinion that says torture is okay. It's value neutral. Nothing is saying that. Okay, so nothing with a brain or a capacity to do logic or anything like that is saying that. So again, there is no appeal to some authority that says so. And we're the smartest authority. And clearly, there's no logic for me to say it doesn't matter what feelings I cause something to feel. Of course, there's a difference.
You see a correlation between the material body and the soul. But since the soul undergoes degeneration, it must be material. Moreover, Sade adds, since the soul changes with the body, since it develops and degenerates, it must, like the body, be composed of changing parts. And again...
So it's just some materialistic description of something called the soul, which is just not very useful. So obviously we have a conscious identity, you know, and you know, you want to call it a soul, whatever. We have a configuration, an organization of the hardware, and you know, it's creating you. So you could fingerprint a brain and say this is its configuration, and that configuration will create these attitudes and these sensations. So what? Yes, it's materialism. Why bother soulifying it. Why bother even indulging in a conversation that requires you to acknowledge some other function than the fact that, yes, we're manifesting being a thing, a person, but it's a synthetic person. It's only in your head. It doesn't exist as as anything but a manifestation of pinball machine functions. And there's an output that is your behavior, and part of your behavior is the sensations. That's part of what you're outputting. That's part of what your brain is creating. It's not only your movements, but your sensations.
That means it must be divisible. So, again, by the first argument, what underlies thought, the thinking principle, that must be material as well.
It all has to be material, and the point is that the consequence of the material function, the movement of electricity through pathways in a bunch of cells, is the fact that we're actually doing it. We're experiencing it. We're tasting it. So there's no point in saying it doesn't exist, because we can smell it, we can taste it, we can experience it. There's no denying the experience. No reasonable denial of the experience. Alright, so thought is just a process of switches, and it just depends on where your cells are today. So mood often screws with our thoughts. We get darker or lighter, depending on how we're feeling or what kind of hormones are running through us and all that kind of crap. We become impatient, easily. So what we will say, or how we'll say it, is so variable. All of this little nuance decides. I make a completely different video if I am pooing irregularly or something, or some other kind of stupid thing will change the video I'm going to make. Okay, now it's not going to radically change it, but it's going to change it because cells are going to be in different conditions and be affected by different chemicals. And yeah, that's part of the nuance of all of this. But what we can say about the actual thoughts, that is the logic, is that it gets built in. And some things you can't unbelieve. 2 + 2 = 4. There's some things you just can't make yourself not believe, not understand, not know, not be a reliable pattern. And, and all of this philosophy stuff is doing is really just saying, can you put together those things that are solid, and can you have them not contradict each other? Can you make statements about reality that aren't contradictory? And I believe we can do all that. So, jumping ahead.
Of beings, a great chain of being, with God at the summit and inanimate matter at the bottom. Humans sit at the peak of the great chain in the natural world. Humans are kind of created in the image of God, so they are above the plants, animals, and minerals.
Right, so he's mocking, I imagine, that kind of thinking, but not doing it in any kind of logical context of recognizing that there's two competitions. Smartest person, feelingest person or thing. So in those two competitions, being an agent of having a welfare stake that's important versus having a capacity to logically and accurately define reality, or any circumstance, build a bridge, whatever, engineer a right answer, a correct statement, put the right words together and make an accurate statement describing a cow's butt or something, in as few words as possible. Stinky. Yeah, so obviously, yes, we are smarter than all the other animals. We have more capacity because of vocabulary mainly. That's the only thing that changed, was our brain devoted a little more space to conceptual association between sounds and concepts. And animals can't do it. They can't learn enough words. And so they can't have a language, and so they can't represent the world or model it with words. And we can. And, that's it. So, yes, we win the intelligence test, but we don't win the my welfare is more important contest. That's a delusion. Thinking that your feelings are more important than something else's feelings, that's a mistake.
Anybody else. You can see that suffering is unpleasant, right? You wouldn't want to suffer, and so since there's no reason to privilege your desires, you shouldn't impose suffering on others. The Sade kind of turns that argument on its head, right?
Right, so yes, and that's all you can do, right? You can't beat that argument. It's such an obvious argument. How could you sit there and say, well, I can see the difference between me feeling good and me feeling bad, and it's important that I feel good, and if I end up feeling good, then that's a positive outcome, and if I'm feeling bad, it's a negative outcome. But I don't understand that to exist for other people or other animals. That would be ridiculous, to think you're the only living, alive thing and the rest of the things are faking it. So until this selfish asshole nihilist actually starts investing in things that give them cancer and make them die slowly, they're hypocrites. They have a conflict between their philosophical statements. It doesn't matter, but it matters what my outcomes are. I should feel good. Winning is me being gratified. Well, how is that? How could that possibly be winning? Winning could be you being tortured beyond all imagination. By your own philosophy, tortured beyond all imagination is just as good as feeling good. So why don't you invest in being tortured forever? I mean, being tortured is bad. Getting it as badly as you can. Why don't you drink tainted water? Why don't you do things that'll cause you great pain and suffering? Oh, that's right, because you're a hypocrite. A duplicitous, full of shit, rationalizing exploitinist, just looking for an excuse to be an asshole. And I really shouldn't even have to argue something so fucking ridiculously corrupt as logic.
So he says, well, nature has no preference at all, right? Once we take up the view from nowhere, there's no reason to treat pleasure as the favored state.
So there's no reason to treat pleasure as the favored state. I mean, there's a gigantic reason, and you feel it every day and every moment of your life. You're feeling the reason, because there are negative feelings. There's feelings that are intrinsically unpleasant and nasty that you will experience, that you can experience, and you goddamn know it. And there's ones that aren't. And so there's just it's ridiculous to say there's no reason when there's damn good reason. Incredibly good reason to believe I don't want to feel intense pain.
So that we should act so as to bring about pleasure in others rather than pain. When I impose a great agony on another person to gain the slightest amount of pleasure for myself, it's arbitrary to suppose that it is my pleasure that should cease, that my desire for pleasure...
So it's not about your pleasure ceasing, it's about rational purchase. And so you've paid a high price that you wouldn't pay, and you're just hypocritically saying, if I can make somebody else pay the high price, it's okay. They don't matter, I do. I mean, that's all there is here. There's nothing else here. It's stupid. There's no logical consistency. It's nonsense.
It should be sacrificed to satisfy the other person's desire to be free from pain. After all, you know, both the pain and the pleasure are mere movements of particles. Pain is bad for me personally when I'm undergoing that pain, but another person's pain need not be bad for me. And it's
all right. So I mean, it's just too ridiculous, right? Why would another person's pain be bad for you? It should only be recognized by you to be fair to the circumstance. The fact is that there's no good reason to believe your sensations are realer than their sensations. No reason to think they're superior. So there's just no rational, consistent argument here to argue. It's just some fake context of stating basically, yes, it's better for me to feel good and it's not worse for you to feel bad. And it's just, it's not asymmetry, it's retarded. All right.
Whatever they want in the moment. Okay, so for the contractarian, morality is a human construction grounded on the self-interest of the contractors. It is in my self-interest to consent to a world in which we all follow certain rules. I accept some constraints on my liberty because this makes me better off in the long run.
Right, and I'm just saying all that can be understood and accepted, and we all should, and I think we do. So, I mean, if you were in a trial for somebody like this, there was a Russian psycho killer, you know, killed like 70 kids and tortured them to death. I mean, you know, he stabbed them minorly and then, you know, fucked them while they died. And, you know, just couldn't get worse. You know, and say some parent found the guy, killed him in some horrible way. What jury's going to convict him? So, I mean, I'm saying that obviously these are ideals that we all like to be able to say it always works, but there's a point where you go to war. There's a point where lots of things happen where the rules change. So, you know, it'd be nice if you could have a durable contract that was simple, but life isn't simple, it's complicated.
That's the basic idea of the social contract. And all of that works even within a thoroughly materialist metaphysics. Now, Sade gives a number of responses to social contract theory. First of all, Sade suggests that the contract on its own terms is unjust. It's not really in the interests of most people, at least, to consent to it, because other people do not obey it and never...
So again, that's the silly part, right? That somehow it's not in your interest to invest in civilization, when of course it is in your interest to invest in civilization. Because you won't have anything. You won't have your iPhone, you won't have your electricity, you won't have anything without that investment, without that preservation of some notion of continuance in terms of an environmental stability. So that's what the social contract is essentially providing some insurance against, is violation. Now, obviously, it can't stop people from blowing shit up, morons, and doing other antics, you know, where they violate those rules. But the amount of violation is so minor compared to what it would be if there was no social contract. If there was no social contract, we would be snipering people all over the place and we'd all be dead. Because we'd all have somebody who doesn't like us, and we'd all be eventually annihilated by the people who don't like us.
Tended to obey it. He says that powerful people agreed to the scheme, and I quote, not in order to prevent their own class from pillaging the weak, but to prevent the weak from despoiling one another, so that they, the powerful, could despoil the weak more conveniently.
Yes, this is all convoluted nonsense about all kinds of interests, but obviously these marquis were always the problem, not the solution, in terms of the wasted resources and the deprivation caused by their excesses. So, little point in pretending that who is the real trespasser and who maintains the, you know, the engine of poverty as and feeds off it, feeds off that desperation, the whole capitalist ideal of, feeding the poor, so they can enslave them. I mean, it's just feeding your slaves makes sense. Okay, breeding your slaves makes sense. But the slavery doesn't make sense.
Be a moral reason. Now, of course, we all recognise, we all acknowledge that people can comply with moral norms for non-moral reasons. You could prevent me from torturing somebody by putting a gun to my head and telling me that you'll shoot me if I lay a finger on them. Well, in that case, I'll leave them alone. And so I'm acting in compliance with the moral norm not to torture people. But obviously my motivation...
Obviously, yes. There's no sincerity in the contract, frankly. I frankly like to be dictator, and I like to clean the world up and take out all the people that suck. They're just causing gratuitous, excesses in pain and suffering. So yeah, all the speeders and all all the noisemakers and all the other people that just cause grief for no good reason, cause aggravation and tension, and fuck them all. So in that sense, the social contract is a huge failure, in the sense that it protects for no... I'd argue there really isn't any good reason to protect gratuitous, obnoxious violators, and there's way too much sympathy for, they couldn't help being obnoxious, rude fuckers, when, yeah, of course they could help it. And they didn't not be a rude fucker because you're not punishing rude fuckery. So the social contract breaks down not because you haven't agreed to the right thing, it's that the social contract is among a bunch of thieves and crooks, and they've got provisions protecting their thievery and their crookery. Unfortunately. Capitalists.
And this can result in the movement of atoms throughout my body and my brain. The more intense these movements, the more intense is the pleasure. Sade says...
Alright, well, whatever. We know it's not that simple. So whatever. The sensations are more about relief, frankly, I would argue. And pimple popping. It's your system builds up a pain and a tension and a aggravation, and whenever that has opportunity to be rebooted, sneezing even, it feels good. It feels good to become separated from the weight, of existence, as the machine that you are, and the mechanism. Say for a person like me who has this tendency to have a negative attitude. A negative opinion of much of the function around me, that the world is hell and I'm living among monsters. Obviously there's a capacity to relieve me of being me, and so I'm going to feel good if I can find some way to separate myself from that condition, so I could watch a movie or do some other thing where I can separate myself from that context and allow it's being just washed of your condition, and almost like a virgin, separating yourself from what you have acquired as what has made you, the experience that has tainted your uncertain anticipation. Something like that.
Of as may those of the pleasure women perpetually feign. So Sade makes 2 points here, right? First of all, pain in others produces a greater intensity of sensation in that person. This is because pain is always more extreme than pleasure, right?
So again, why would somebody think the intensity makes it good? That somehow more intense pain is better than unintense pleasure? It's just too ridiculous again. I mean, it's watching the wrong thing. It's like saying something's moving this way and you're watching this way. You know, it's not going to work.
Like, imagine the most intensely pleasurable sensation you've ever had. Now, would you take 5 minutes of that most pleasurable sensation in exchange for 5 minutes of the worst, most painful sensation you've ever had? I think most people would refuse that offer.
I'll refuse all the offers, frankly, because 5 minutes of sorry, not worth anything. I'm not even giving away a stub toe for that one.
I mean, I certainly would refuse that offer. Like 5 minutes of the most intense pleasure really would not be worth taking 5 minutes of the most intense pain. In any case,
so this gets into the category of subjective, you know, where each one of us is going to have this inability to have a common definition of what's a headache. You know, so some people have a headache and they're having a migraine. You know, some people are having, you know, it's all on some kind of different scale, and so this is it's kind of just a rubbish conversation to try to imagine. You know, my worst sensation might be half of what your worst sensation has been in life. You know, I might have no clue what a real pain is, or vice versa. So, you know, it's, yeah, we have to concede that, yeah, we don't all are going to see what we're trading exactly the same way. You know, if we're trading blankets, some people are going to see the fleas and the crabs or some other bugs that are on the blanket, and other people aren't going to see them. So it's hard to be, it's hard to be doing this trading, okay, in a circumstance where, you know, what's being traded is subject to interpretation.
Pleasure has a rather annoying tendency not to last very long. You know, I mean, the pleasure of orgasm, say, will last, you know, what, like 10 or 20 seconds? Where
Whoa, well, I can do a little better than that. But anyway, whatever. Yeah. Then you have that whole afterglow thing. Or something like that, anyway. In some cases. Yeah, that's where it gets all complicated. Yeah, whether you're, you know, with somebody, not, you know, it's all, you know, but that's all part of the psychology, I suppose. So again, way too subjective.
By contrast, consider pain. Pain is easy to inflict. It doesn't matter if you're old and ugly. Indeed, being old and ugly will probably help increase the suffering. As Sade says, to produce the painful impression requires no virtues at all. The more defects a man may have, the more...
Yeah, that's one of the liabilities of life. So that's one of the statements you make against the whole stupid fucking thing, is that it's really easy to break it, and it's really hard to maintain it. It's durable goods, it's fragile, it's a lot of things. So our state of well-being is a fragile thing, a delicate thing, easily ruined by a hard rain, like the rose or something. You know, pretty flower. So yeah, fuck it. It just breaks too easy. Don't play with it.
At least in certain situations. Maybe these sentiments are not as prevalent as we would like, but you know, clearly people have some capacity for guilt and remorse. And if you go around, you know, just like randomly, I don't know.
So guilt is again just sort of an ego thing, okay? So, and it's a manipulation, you know, where you can only experience that if you think it matters, okay? And you're in a competition to have something called integrity or something. So it's like playing golf or tennis or baseball or football. You got to be in that game. So if you're not in the game of having, you know, winning, if all you want to do is pass the test, then you'll cheat, okay? If you want a cleaner victory and you want to be, you know, and you need it to be clean, yeah, then you're going to be motivated by things like guilt. And so, you know, I don't see it how it's that relevant, because that just gets into the psychology of how you perceive reality, and if you can just make up the truth versus you want to be able to live the truth. I mean, there's people with screen names like, you know, Big Dick or something, and you know they don't have a big dick.
Like law of nature, mechanical law, not in the sense of moral law, but like just the most basic kind of drive, most basic principle of conduct bred into us by nature is to take what belongs to others, to steal from them, to devour them, if you have the desire to do so. And as Sade has already argued, humans are no different. Humans are...
So yes, look, you know, that's even gets into all the religious themes, is this whole wanting, coveting, and so you could talk to Hannibal Lecter, and you know, and even he can figure that part out. You know, and that's the machine is wanting, and clearly we end up kind of in kind of a dopey, doopish kind of way. People end up wanting things they wouldn't want if somebody else didn't have them. So again, it's just about the competition thing. And so if the guy who's winning is wearing orange shoes, then everybody's going to start buying orange shoes. I mean, that kind of, you know, meme theme that drives people to want things they didn't generate that desire naturally. They just acquired it environmentally because everybody else is doing it.
Feel the most vehement desire to be rid of those by whom he is hampered, troubled, or those whose death may be of some advantage to him. Indeed, Sade is sometimes tempted towards a kind of...
Okay, so the most basic natural impulse that drives all wild animals is to take from others. So again, that's a silly paraphrase, a silly underdeveloped statement regarding the necessity of competition and the fact that that's what the DNA requires of them, but it's not the natural impulse. The natural impulse is to have, the natural impulse isn't to take. I think it's that obvious. If you want a banana, you go to the banana tree. You only steal it from somebody else if the tree is empty. So I'd say the natural impulse is to have, the natural impulse isn't to take.
Psychological egoism. The virtuous, he suggests, are deluding themselves, right? But really they are, just like everyone else, motivated by their own interests. They're motivated...
Yes, so to jump on the grenade and save your fellow man, you kind of have to have a hero mentality. You have to have something in your brain that says, I'm better off, okay? I'm going to show... I'm going to win the integrity war, okay? I'm going to do the right thing, and I'll be able to put that on my tombstone. I did the right thing, and you know, that kind of thing. So yes, in some way you have to make it in your own interest that you lose horribly because in one category, because you're going to win big in another category. So it's almost like the sadomasochist kind of stuff where, you know, the people who are masochistically hurting themselves, they're accepting a negative because it's going to produce a positive in terms of their ego and their sense of control and their status. It's going to make them feel like they have the bigger dick. So they'll accept some pain to feel like, you know,
by their own interests just as much as the vicious are. Because what underlies virtue is really reciprocal exchange. Like, I give unto you in order that I may obtain from you in exchange. But within civilization, people...
Well, we know,
we still see people being basic.
We know all these bargains are just a bunch of usury. So most people's friendships is based on a kind of usury, a usefulness. And that people are always calculating usefulness. And as soon as you're unuseful, well, you don't get Christmas cards anymore, and you don't get this, and you don't get, you know. So, unfortunately, we are not very sincere in how we interact, appreciate other people. And it's only through some life experience where you can become more habitual in terms of just recognizing the value of being nice to someone else.
Cultures, sometimes cultures very close to our own. Conversely, there are plenty of actions that we accept that would be shocking to others. Homosexuality was a serious crime in Sade's time, but today we tolerate, even embrace, all sexual orientations.
I don't even know what that so embrace is kind of a funny term, but clearly it's who cares, in terms of you're just saying, well, that's your private business, okay? I don't, it doesn't matter to me what you rub up against, as long as you're doing it consensually and you're not imposing yourself. Who cares? I mean, why would it be relevant whether you like Kool-Aid or Hawaiian Punch? They're both garbage.
Well, maybe not all of them, but certainly homosexuality is embraced. Even the very principle...
I don't even, so, I mean, it comes with so much, you can't just say homosexuality because it brings up the subject of it's not just about, sexual preference. It's about social, interaction. And, they have to kind of wear it on their sleeve. So they're sort of, which, again, we're allowed to have personal reactions. It's just part of the facts of life that long hair or da-da-da-da. So the whole part of homosexuality, which is more like hippie versus skinhead, they've turned this sexual preference into some sort of affected lifestyle, however you want to say it, a way of behaving, gayness. It goes beyond. There's Rock Hudson homosexuals where you'd never know kind of thing, and then there's overt tiptoe through the tulips kind of homosexuality where it's in your face.
By which we judge actions can vary enormously across cultures. Today, many people tend to be broadly utilitarian, right? Like, most people think that we should organise society so as to promote pleasure and minimise suffering.
Yes, and obviously, but they have absolutely no reasoning skills to do that in any kind of sensible way. So they say it as some kind of ideal, but they never even come close to delivering a good deal.
Alone, it's supposed to be eaten with like bread and sour cream and so on. But even so, even if you add the bread and sour cream, a lot of people on first exposure to surströmming might well just start vomiting due to the smell. But the repugnance that we feel towards different foods is often just a matter of unfamiliarity.
Okay, so that's not even true either. It usually has to do with what's attacked you badly in the past, and you're off it for the rest of your life. Your brain has a memory, your system, and it does impose. So yeah, I don't, getting into all that, again, this is the subjective part about what we personally experience and how that it can affect you. So I could argue that as a kid, I was, I delivered newspapers, so lots of dogs didn't like me. And, but I was pretty good with them. And so I got bit a couple of times, but it's no big deal. Just, grabbing the pants covering your butt. No holes, no real hard holes poked in me. And then later, 30, 40 years later, I got attacked by a pit bull. And completely different. So if I was saying if I could reverse those two, the little murders versus the big murder, so to speak, and which one put me off more, So I'm just saying that I was fine with dogs, with those little negative interactions. But the big one, yeah, I just, I have a completely different, in my capacity to interface with dogs is completely different because one tried to eat my face. And so, so everybody has those subtle experiences with all these things, and it's all of that is going to be part of your capacity to be a fair cop, so to speak. But I'd argue there's a certain fairness to the knowledge provided, so I'm almost grateful for having the experience, because now I can appreciate just how terrifying it is, all right, to have one of those animals go crazy on you, and to have that imposed by somebody else, their recklessness.
Again, if you'd been born in Sweden, if you'd been born with the right kind of background, you would probably be perfectly fine with surströmming.
I don't know what that is, like eating eyeballs or something, I don't know, but whatever.
Maybe not actually. There are probably a lot of Swedish people who don't like it either. But again, even so, right? A lot of this is due to unfamiliarity. Similarly, consider genres of music that you initially hate because they sound unfamiliar, but you can come to appreciate with gradual
yeah, vice versa. So again, this is not terribly interesting. There has to be some concession that there's going to be a whole part of things we're going to discuss that doesn't have any. There's no logical framework to discuss the superiority of a certain kind of art or something. There's just no point in doing it. Hello? There's nothing there. Must be the end. Yeah, I didn't think I was at the end yet.
As Sade says, there is no rational commensuration between what affects us and what affects others. The first we sense physically, the other touches us only morally. And
so again, it only touches us morally is stupid. We know the brains are basically the same. We know that the basic function's the same, and it's just idiotic to say somebody else's headache doesn't affect me. Of course it doesn't affect me. It's in their brain, okay? It's in their consciousness. But I can perfectly understand it and give it full weight as something happening. I can recognize that there's no difference between my crushed fender and his crushed fender. It's a crushed fender. It'd be ridiculous to say it's my car's crush fender is more important than his car's crush fender. Too silly. Alright, so that probably is enough. So, yeah, so I guess I'll do some more pondering on the subject was going to be, okay, until I got distracted by this nihilist shit, is are you really worth it? You know, and just trying to go through making some sort of argument. And it sort of relates to that piece of art by Old Fan of, you know, all the different animals, you know, trapped in this horror. And it's you know, just appreciating the depth of what the biosphere pays for this infestation on Earth. I mean, just, you know, you could just take a few acres of ocean sea life and, you know, all the drama taking place. You know, how many things pop in and out of being alive, you know, in 1 hour. You know, how much of that this event is taking place. This destruction, and, you know, that is in some sense the most significant part of your existence is going to be your destruction. You're not going to die in your sleep. It's not a high probability. You know, well, you're going to spend some time dying before you sleep and die in your sleep or whatever. You know, and this being destroyed is a big part of this story. It's not a little part. And that's the real taint, is, you know, all these people are going to talk about how great it is to be alive and they haven't died yet. So that's just such a, it's like that lack of knowledge. It's like the fact that they haven't been attacked by a pit bull, so they can't really talk about what it's like because they haven't done it. You know, and how it changes the perspective. And I'm sure your death is going to change your perspective. It's going to give you some insight into what pain is and what waste is. Yeah. Anyway, so enough of a video and such and so forth and whatnot. So till the next time, and such. So I think my video was pretty good, just talking about the subject, and it's different than this video, but yes, it's a lot of the same, pointing out that materialism, atheism, physics doesn't spell nihilistic, sadistic shitism. It doesn't obligate you to be shitty. Yeah, it doesn't. Alright, anyway, till the next time and such.